Scrutiny Committee. Standing in today, I'll be chairing the meeting. And to begin with, a few matters of housekeeping. In the event of an emergency, there are no practice alarms planned for this meeting. So if an alarm sounds, please evacuate City Hall by going down the main staircase and out to the War Memorial in front of City Hall. Could you use microphones at all times when you speak and speak directly into them? Can you all hear me? No. Okay. How's that now? Is that better? Yeah. Yeah. These right, is that better? Is that too much? Is that okay? Okay. If you mute your microphones when you're not speaking, there's a red button that will come on as well. The meeting's being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly. Set them to silent and don't use voice or camera flash functions. Members of the committee and officers will introduce themselves now, starting from my left and going around the room.
Hello, I'm Gary Champion. I'm a councillor for Sewell Ward.
Hello, I'm Hannah Höchner, councillor for Nelson Ward.
Hello, Caroline Ackroyd, Eton Ward, subbing for James Lawrence.
Councillor Mike Sands, Bothorpe Ward.
Hello, Councillor Chris Smith for Town Close.
Richard Laws, councillor.
Good afternoon, I'm Ian Stutely, councillor for Mancroft.
Councillor Kate Oliver, Town Close Ward.
Oliver Ferber, the Interim Head of Environment Services.
Good afternoon, Craig Miller. I'm the new Superintendent for Norwich, South Norfolk and Broadland.
Afternoon, Liam Bannon, Community Safety Manager at the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Norfolk.
Hello, I'm Temporary Superintendent Ed Brown of Great Yarmouth in North Norfolk, but up until last week, I was the Chief Inspector of Norwich for the last 18 months.
Councillor Beth Jones, I'm Cabinet Member responsible for Community Safety.
Hello, I'm Karen Smith and I'm the Community Safety Manager at Norwich City Council.
Hi, I'm Davina Howes and I'm Executive Director for Communities and Housing, Norwich City Council.
Hi, I'm Jan Rondleton and I'm the Head of Legal and Governance.
Alexandra Cosmo, Senior Committee Officer.
Thank you very much and welcome to everyone, and thank you for attending today. Councillor Wright, so item 1 is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Wright. Welcome Councillor Ackroyd subbing. Yes.
Use some Councillor Sue Sands, but with the change of date, it now clashed with her what do you call it, governance meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
Not exactly apologies, but I will need to leave at 6 o'clock, so I'll be leaving early. Sorry about that.
That's noted. And Councillor Kendrick sends his apologies too. So item 2, declarations of interest. So you need to publicly announce the item number, whether the interest is disclosable, pecuniary, or any other registrable or non-registrable interest. Do we have anything to declare there? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes. The public and the exempt minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2025 are before the committee for confirmation. Are there any points of accuracy that need to be raised on? Can I suggest that we take the entire public and below the line meeting notes together, unless anyone would like to raise anything separately on the below the line notes? So I need a proposer, please, for those. Would anyone like to be proposing them as accurate? Thank you. So we have a proposer, and do we have a seconder? Thank you, Mike. Can we vote on that? Are we happy with them? Yes, I think we have. That the minutes of the meeting have been confirmed and will be signed after the meeting. So we can move on now to our first item, which is item 4. Does everyone have a copy of the papers with them? It's a Safer Norwich Board, the Community Safety Partnership and Community Safety Activity, and I'm very happy to welcome Councillor Jones here in her capacity as Chair of the Safer Norwich Board. Edward Brown, Chief Inspector for Norwich, Superintendent Craig Miller, here tonight in the new role. Well, from your old role, but now as a new role, I think. And Liam Banham, who's the Community Safety Manager at the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Norfolk. So very welcome. So I'll hand over to Councillor Jones to introduce the item.
Thank you, Councillor. Doing well today already. So it's been really positive to be able to bring together different organisations across the city, because we know that as one local authority we can't address all the different challenges that face our communities, and this gives us a really good opportunity to have those conversations where we all can bring different things to the table and address challenges that we face in a collaborative manner. And it's been very productive work so far, and it's always adapting and emerging different ways of doing things and the different things that come up. So it's been a really positive partnership, and it brings together, whilst we've got a few of our partners today, we also have organisations like CGL, Neighbourhood Watch, the University of East Anglia, a whole range of different partners all coming to the table to have these conversations and look at how we can work collaboratively. And we all bring different skills and resources. I won't go into it in much more detail because I think it's important more that the time is spent with members asking the questions they need to ask. But I think from the point of view as a portfolio holder, it's been really positive for that, looking at the city as a whole and working together rather than all of us working in silos. And I think that always provides the most effective results for people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add that we're glad to have this report before scrutiny, because I think this is a function that we should probably have been discharging up till now as a committee, that it's a requirement that we look at this annually. So I think going forward, that might be something we'd like to think about when we, if we have it this time every year, if you think about what can be in this report as you talk about it now, what kind of format you want it in, whether you want training on any of it, and if we'd like some time with the team, etc. Those are the kind of things you could be thinking about in recommendations. If we could we can talk about examples and things would be really useful, but if we can try not to get too much into individual cases, I'm sure you won't, but just you can use detail to explain things, but we'll try and stay on a higher level, because obviously this is quite a high level approach, community safety, and we're one partner in a wider team. But having said that, we're a very important partner, and we want to make sure this report, takes us forward and we get some good recommendations out of it. So thanks for the report, and we'll have some questions and discussion. Who'd like to go first?
This is more by way of comment, I suppose, than question or discussion. But across both, I think they work on the west of Norwich. We have a neighbourhood policing team headed up by Sergeant Larkin, and I found them to be absolutely excellent. And all through the summer of discontent, they've been very, very communicative and only too willing to assist and talk to local residents, and I found them very, very supportive. So I think they should be commended.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Perhaps a recommendation around that. Councillor Herkenau was next.
Thank
Thank you. I've got quite a few questions, but maybe I can just take them by topic and then leave space for others. So the first one is around road safety. I'm wondering what the board currently does around that and whether there's scope to maybe do more. So I'm thinking of enforcing speed limits, especially the 20 miles per hour, whether there's scope to do more to enforce it, because what residents expressed to us, a lot of concern around not feeling safe around roads with people speeding through their neighborhoods. And then maybe a related question around antisocial and obstructive parking, whether there's scope for that to be looked into or addressed more through that board.
Hand this one over to Liam to talk about, as it's part of the community safety partnership for the whole of Norfolk.
Thank you. So
Could I just respond to the point about, I think it was antisocial parking and things that you talked about there. Yeah, that's an item I think on the scrutiny work programme for this scrutiny committee, and I know that's something you'll pick up as a scrutiny, but I think that's a topic you've got coming up on your work programme.
Did you want to pick up on the answer at all?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think there's just, in addition to the kind of antisocial speeding, there's a lot of general speeding. And I'm not quite sure I understood whether there's ways in which the city council or this partnership could influence that more, rather than just saying the county council is dealing with it, because I don't think residents have seen that being dealt with so far.
So I think there is some work. There's some work being done as part of the PSPO in particular areas whereby we're looking at some road calming measures in conjunction with the county council. My colleague Tim Bacon is leading on that from the perspective of Norwich City Council. So in particular, sort of around the Mousehold area, we've had some difficulties up in Britannia Road, and we're also liaising with some of the business parks where there's been some particular issues. There's some very well developed set of warning letters that go out in respect to breaches of the PSPO that are actually sent via the operational partnership team at the police. And then if we have the evidence, there would be the possibility of a prosecution, but we haven't got to the stage of that prosecutions yet. Speeding in itself is a criminal offence, so where there is that witness, that would be in the police's powers to deal with that.
Yeah, sorry, just to pick up a little bit. So obviously, a lot of the communities that we engage with talk about speeding being a really significant concern. So I don't doubt that people are concerned about it. We obviously have various speeding initiatives such as Community Speed Watch, where we set up schemes enabling volunteers to do their own speed enforcement, and then advisory letters are then sent out to individuals, and that is particularly effective. It also enables us to have a much greater reach because we have only a finite number of police officers and staff who can do those speed checks. So if communities can take responsibility themselves, that's great. As mentioned with Operation Octane, it is very much an education-focused initiative first, where we're trying to get people to drive safely. But as my colleagues said, when they don't, we'll send out warning letters, advisory letters, and there have been traffic offence reports and prosecutions taken forward where people have continued to commit speeding offences. On the issue of inconsiderate parking or blocking of pavements, from a policing perspective, our responsibility is where there is an obstruction that causes a danger to other road users. It isn't just a case of saying someone's parked partially on a pavement. There is an objective assessment as to whether an obstruction is causing a danger to other road users. And I'm sure, as everyone can appreciate as well, we do have lots and lots of calls for service coming in from a threat, harm and risk basis. A lot of the reports that come in, absolutely a nuisance, and I wish there were an easier and quicker way of dealing with it, but it does undoubtedly kind of fall down the pile of prioritisation. But if people take photos, send them into the constabulary, they are things that can be followed up slow time.
Thank you. So, and antisocial parking will, of course, be on the work programme, just to reiterate that. So those in more detail, we can look at that there. But on the speeding side of things and speed limits, is there anything you'd like to propose around that we could put? I mean, have a think if you think there's a recommendation that could be useful, but you could come back with it at the end. Did you have more questions?
Yes, personally, I just find it helpful to learn more about Community Speed Watch and how the council can promote that more, because I'm not sure our residents are necessarily aware that that exists and how they can get involved. And I'm sure people would be interesting to support it if it makes their neighbourhood safer.
That's something that we could quite possibly promote.
So that's perhaps something to note, Alex. I've got a question, but Ian, go first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually following up on on the Community Speed Watch, it is a really good programme. I know of a few that are in place. They're entirely operated by members of the community, so residents operate these, and they have some training which allows them to send out the letters or create the data that triggers those letters. And in one or two places, and I know one in particular on Grove Walk in Town Close, my old ward, there are some significant outliers there, very large numbers of speeders there. So when we get those kinds of results, what kind of response are the first of all, are they noticed when there's such outliers? What kind of response is the police going to give to that? And would you recommend to councils, county council or city council, implementing measures to try and prevent further prevention in those areas? Because usually mitigation measures and traffic calming is implemented as a result of statistics on accidents rather than speeding. So wondered if there was any powers there to bring something forward, but also, and finally, I understand that Norfolk police do not enforce the 20-mile-an-hour limits. Is there any chance that could happen, as they do in London, I believe?
As for the enforcement of 20-mile-per-hour limits, that's something I would obviously have to take away for further consideration. I think with the equipment that is used by safety camera partnerships, I don't think it is calibrated to such a level that the enforcement would stand up, which is one of the reasons why the people zapped by Community Speed Watch had just sent an enforcement advisory letter saying, look, you've been clocked speeding. What I do know is that all the statistics come back into the safety camera partnership. They review that, and if there are significant outliers in terms of clearly there's a speeding problem here, that will then trigger the deployment of safety camera partnership staff who will actually go out with a calibrated speed gun or a mobile camera van and do enforcement where possible there. I think if there was, and this is talking more hypothetically, if there were a significant problem identified at any particular location, that would then obviously trigger the conversations through county highways regarding preventative measures that could be put in place in terms of road changes, etc.
Thank you. Yeah, Ian, did you want to follow up?
Yes, please. Just on the enforcement, I understand, of course, the speed watch is a different type of equipment that they use. Would you support the introduction of enforcement through cameras in 20-mile-an-hour zones? Because I understand at the moment that they're all enforced apart from through these community speed watch statistics. So there's no fines or points given for those going over the 20-mile-an-hour.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we don't want people to speed in any area, and particularly a 20-mile-an-hour per zone is going to be, a residential area, a school area. So anyone speeding in the area, you would want to have preventative measures that would stop people and deter people from speeding. I don't know the exact reason why we don't prosecute 20-mile-per-hour breaches, but it's something I think the constabulary would look at if other areas are able to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds a bit like there's a recommendation around asking for more information about what could go forward on 20-mile-an-hour enforcement. Councillor Ackroyd and then Councillor Champion.
Apologies for my phone share, by the way. Just linked to what's been said about e-scooters and so on and so forth, pavement parking. I just wanted to mention actually driving on pavements, which by cars, which seems to me just so that it's been noted really, because it seems to be a growing thing, especially around schools, but also, to avoid traffic calming, as my local beat manager will no doubt have reported. It just is a huge concern where you've got people on pavements, but you've got cars on pavements. It was just a throw-in comment when you're looking at the whole thing of speeding, but, it is a huge concern. Thank you.
Thank you. That's noted, I'm sure. Councillor Champion.
Thank you, Chair. However tempting it is to talk about traffic further, which I'm sure I could do, I noted recently that there's a targeted emphasis in the city centre to tackle youth congregating and being antisocial, as was advertised on social media. I note that in the Safer Neighbourhood Initiative on page 11, it talks about how during the summer, 5,000 was granted to targeted youth support services to give young people activities and things to do. Firstly, I just want for the record say 5,000 is a pitiful amount of money to deal with that. And I wonder how much we're paying for officers to patrol areas now to deal with the same thing. And why is this not a year round, bearing in mind that Norwich used to have facilities such as Open, which was a youth club, and other facilities, and that we don't have them now. And my worry as a parent with teenagers, and I work with a lot of young people, my worry is that the police then become the enemy, in the sense of young people then congregating, concerned that the police are not somebody who keeps them safe. Anecdotally, my son was walking home, he was 17 recently, with some friends. They had a problem, somebody was harassing them. He phoned the police, and I was so proud of him, but his friends had advised him against phoning the police because they thought that would then create the issue. And so he did the right thing. But I think that we're creating an atmosphere where young people don't engage with the police. And the social media campaign that I've observed on in relation to young people, I found a little bit concerning, especially considering that we were doing something in the summer. And so I just sort of wanted to pick that apart a bit and to see what thoughts and opinions were.
So this is something that we are working on actively at the moment. The £5,000 that is referred to regarding the Targeted Youth Support Service in Chapelfield was a specific grant from the council as part of a wider piece of work that was funded more mainstream, but we gave some additional funding to help expand that. So that wasn't the total amount of funding, it was the amount of funding that Norwich City Council gave from our Safer Neighbourhoods initiative. That piece of work actually reached 1,500 children over the course of the summer, which Targeted Youth Support and Norwich City Council are really proud of. In respect of the ongoing work that's happening, sort of specifically targeted around Haymarket and Hay Hill area, this is something that's really been emerging over the last few weeks. It's being approached much more as an engagement with the young people. Whilst you may have seen one sort of press release from the police, the way it's actually working is that Targeted Youth Support Service have been given quite a large pot of funding from the ASB hotspot funding that the police have to actually be out there engaging with the young people and keeping them safe. We have spotted some signs of criminal and sexual exploitation among some of the young people that actually are out in the Haymarket and Hay Hill areas. So the Targeted Youth Support Services are there to actually go out, engage with them, and get the children involved in diversionary activities. We've held a problem-solving meeting literally about 2 weeks ago, whereby we had the relevant partners around the table from the police, Targeted Youth Support Service and myself, and we had a really productive meeting in which we looked at what are the causes, why are the children all of a sudden congregating in Hay Hill and Haymarket when we haven't seen that for quite a period of time. What can we do in addition to keep them safe? So some of the things that have been saying is that they're congregating there because it's a nice attractive area, which is what was the aim of the refurbishment in that area. But they also know that there's quite good CCTV coverage there. There's good responsible guardianship. There's lots of people walking past and it keeps them safe. And we're also looking at where we can, if there's a little bit of a black spot, that we can put a redeployable CCTV camera in to help keep the children safe. But Targeted Youth Support Service are really engaging with them with those safety messages, looking at what the behaviours that they're exhibiting are saying to other users of the space and how they can better portray themselves as sort of the fact that they're congregating there to meet with their friends and not cause antisocial behaviour. The police are there very much in an engagement capacity as well, aren't they, Ed? We've got Sergeant Chris Clay is very much on the problem solving sort of committee that we've got together, and him and his team are out there engaging with people with exactly the same aim that you said, to make it safe for children to feel that they can talk to the police, that they can report things that they need to, but also they will deal with anything that they see that is causing that area to be unsafe. And we do know that there's some elements of sort of alcohol and substance misuse that might be taking place, and we're looking at how we can work with our licensing teams to prevent that as well, keeping the children safe but also making the area safe for other users.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a further question or recommendation around that? Or
well, I guess my question
very useful update. Thank you.
If I may, I would like an update on this. I feel like this is really interesting, and I don't want to forget what you've just said or have to rewatch it and scribble it down like a lunatic. So if possible, could I get an update on this? Also, just out of curiosity, with the engagement team, are they linking with schools and other organisations? That's all in place, is it?
Absolutely. This is very much working hand in hand with the POLED. That's the police have got sort of community safety work, some sort of PSE work that they're doing, and there was even an email that was sent out to parents of all of the schools around Norwich asking them to talk to their children about staying safe. We want to encourage young people to take those first responsible steps into independence, but obviously the responsibility is still on the parents to make sure that their children are safe when they're outside. So there was an email that went round tail end of last week, talking to parents to talk to their children about those safety messages. We've also done work in other areas of the city, sort of the castle area, Chapelfield Gardens, continually reiterating those messages to young people. And in my role as community safety manager, whereby we see on some of our housing assets that there is issues surrounding young people, then we will engage with them and the relevant agencies to make sure that the right messages are getting across to those young people.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Liam wanted to come in and then
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Sally. It did turn itself on. It was on. It is the targeted youth support service and where that has come from. So that has been developed over quite a number of years, definitely since 2023, but even more before that by County Council, and has been supported by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office through a number of funding grants. So through the Safer Streets Fund and also the Serious Violence Duty, we've provided, I don't want to be quoted on the amount of money because I don't have it in my mind, but it's to a really substantial amount to the effect that it will support a team of youth workers that are able to engage with schools, but also to undertake outreach activity. As to what Karen's already alluded, I think that's a really important factor, that it's something that in Norfolk our partnership has really brought into to driving that youth engagement as a preventative and protective factor.
yes, and then we've got another point, I think. Yeah.
Just for the record, my honest opinion is that until we get more youth centres that we've lost systematically over the last 20 years, and since I've moved to Norwich, we've virtually lost them all. All of these activities are effectively futile because you're not dealing with the crux of the issue, which is, you know, my teenagers don't want to stay in the house and listen to me. And if I got an email and had to tell them about safety, I'm the last person they're going to listen to as well, just for the record. I think we need to be working, you know, collaboratively with other organizations and with, you know, with whoever. I don't really care. But what we need is some youth provision within our city once again. I think losing Open in conjunction with COVID was one of the most detrimental things to the young people in our city. And so I just wanted to put that for the record.
Thank you, Chief Inspector.
Thank you. I was just going to say just a bit of context. So go back to March of this year, and Norwich was starting to see a real problem around serious youth violence. We had a number of incidents, most of which were sort of covered in the media, with people being stabbed, people being attacked with dog chains, young people being stopped and searched and found in possession of weapons. And we've come a long way since then. I suppose it's, you know, sort of 8-9 months later. But what we are seeing now is particularly large numbers of you know, youths sort of ranging from sort of, you know, 10, 12 up until sort of, you know, late teens, early 20s, coming out in their hundreds, coming together en masse, coming into the areas like the Haymarket. We've had several events involving people on bicycles coming out, and, you know, hundreds of teenagers kind of taking over the city on bicycles, which, you know, causes all sorts of, you know, issues of challenges of antisocial behaviour from a policing perspective. But I suppose, as you've commented on, sir, it's a lot of them are just young people trying to come together and find different ways of entertaining themselves. But as to the, you know, the ongoing work that we're doing now in the Haymarket, there is that concern that, you know, whilst the vast majority are there for really good purposes and well intentioned, and to eat many Big Macs from McDonald's, there is that fringe element that could lead to exploitation, risk, drugs, etc. And that's the bit that we're really keen to get into and understand. And it's so good that we're doing that in partnership with Targeted Youth Services, so that it's not just a police enforcement initiative. This should all be about working with young people to remove the or the concern around policing and create safer spaces for Norwich City Centre.
Thank you. So I think we could have a recommendation around commending that work, but noting the necessity of wider youth provision, which I think you're saying you'd be in agreement with. I think you're happy with that, because I think Councillor Champion's point was that it's good to deal with the problems, but the reason we've got them is that those services have been withdrawn systematically. Okay.
I'm apolitical, so I don't comment on that. But,
thank you. Yeah, understood. Okay, so we have Councillor Sands, Councillor Stutley. Sorry. Let's go first with Councillor Fulton McAllister. But you haven't spoken yet, and they have. So go ahead, go first, and then we'll move down the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to ask about whether and how much exploration, because I know there's been issues regarding this proposal before, in terms of funding that was due to come on stream and then was regrettably pulled by the last government. But I wanted to ask about what we're doing to explore the use of community wardens in terms of the neighbourhood plan. Is something which I think around the table we all have an ambition for. There are councils which have multiple different setups. I think Chichester is the council which manages it on the most shoestring of budgets at about 140 odd thousand. Ultimately, recruiting part-time community wardens who genuinely have as an occupational requirement that they live within the community that they serve, which enables them to pick up a lot of work ad hoc and able to bill it in as work which is overtime. So I was wondering what we were doing to look at that and what cost benefit analysis we had done. So for example, in Chichester, a lot of the housing associations report that they are receiving rents in a more timely way. There are fewer rent arrears. Those things would actually provide quite a good funding base, or an offset at least. So any comments on that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you.
So we were successful in 2024 in getting some Safer Streets funding. It didn't actually transpire into a community warden per se. We were able to recruit a community ASB response officer. Danny has become an integral part of the team, and we were successful in getting some shared prosperity funding to extend that into this year. So currently, Tim Bacon, who's our Safer Neighbourhood coordinator, is preparing a report that will detail the work that Danny has done in his time in the post. And we'll look at the successes that we've had with that role and make some recommendations, and also look at what potential funding we may be able to access to extend his contract potentially past the end of the year, what the potential may be for further street wardens. So there's some work ongoing at this very moment.
Obviously, some areas are benefiting from Pride in Place funding, and I just wondered whether this was something which I know we aren't, well, the council isn't going to be responsible for that. It's going to be community groups, but there will be conversations that could be had around it.
I think obviously Pride in Place, the announcements was made by the government, but it's very high level. We are still waiting for lots of detail. I think one of the issues with Pride in Place, a lot of that is capital funding. So it doesn't necessarily enable that revenue type funding for the, I know it's one of it, but until we've got the detail of that fund, what we can spend it on, what are the rules around it, and obviously, as you say, it's community led. We can't really comment, but that might be one option. But I do think the vast majority of it is capital funding.
Thank you. So we'll start to move to a conclusion on this one now, but I think I've got a few more questions. Could you just indicate again who? So if we go down the table that way, is that okay? We'll start with Hannah, then Mike, then Ian.
Before we go on, my question has sort of been answered
Oh.
through what Matthew asked about the ASB officer. So yeah.
Thanks. So,
Yeah, thanks. Okay, hopefully it stays on now. Yeah, I saw that prevent and community cohesion are mentioned as priorities for 2025-26, and I was wondering whether hate crime was also part of that list of priorities, and just kind of in the context of what's been happening around the Brook Hotel with the flags. We had lots of concerns from residents who didn't feel safe, especially residents who are people of color not feeling safe, and I'm just wondering what the plan is for increasing safety and what lines of communication exist with, for example, the mosques or with sanctuary organizations.
So I can pick this one up because it's something I'm directly working with. We have already this year held a hate crime conference within Norfolk, and that took place, was September, was it? Early October, and there's lots of pieces of work that's coming out of that will be developing over the forthcoming months. We have also promoted hate crime reporting. I think it's fair to say that the country has seen an increase in hate crime over the past sort of, well, year on year really, and I'm sure Ed or Craig will be able to provide a little bit more detail on that. But we are working directly with the Brook Hotel. We've provided them with some posters and flyers in terms of how to report hate crime. Probably the biggest thing that I'd like to say in response to this is that we are now working with an organisation called Belong, who are the Cohesion and Integration Network. We've done some early work with them to identify what the opportunities are. They've come alongside us, and we've already held 2 workshops for councillors to support you with when working in your wards, and I hope you found, those of you who have attended found those helpful. There is an opportunity still on Monday of next week for those of you who haven't attended to come along, and there will be a follow-up on that as well to really sort of pick up on the themes and trends that have come through those workshops. And we touched at the end of the workshop on some techniques that might be helpful when dealing with this kind of thing, and that's something that they're also going to be providing more detail on in the follow-up workshops. Moving forward, what we want to facilitate is some honest conversations. We're aware that there is very much a spectrum of feelings across Norwich in respect of the migrant sentiment that's happening at the moment, and we want to have some honest conversations with people that not just look at the sort of the views that are being immediately surfaced, but what's below those as well, the things that are causing people to display some of the opinions that they're having, whilst also supporting those who are seeking sanctuary in our communities. So we'll be looking at things along the lines of what can we do to really support people living within Norwich who are expressing things along the lines of they can't get doctors or dentists. How can we help when it's not directly within our gift, but what can we do in terms of signposting? Then really working on those feelings of cohesion to bring back. Norwich has always been a city that has welcomed strangers. We have a long history of that, and we really want to build on the work that the City of Sanctuary are doing to make Norwich welcoming for everybody.
Thank you, Karen. Did you want to comment on that, Hannah?
It's come on again for some reason. Yeah, it'd be interesting to also hear from the police whether you've seen an uptick in reports of hate crime or whether you feel that people know how to report if they become the victim of a hate crime. And then I wanted to maybe as a recommendation ask whether we could maybe see the report that you were mentioning coming out of the hate crime conference. I'm not sure who was involved in that, but that'd be something that'd be interesting to look at.
Yep, that's something that's within that we can certainly circulate.
So yeah, I'm happy to come back on the sort of the issue of the kind of Brook Hotel and sort of protest activity and hate crime and hate incidents over the summer period, which has been very busy and very challenging, very resource intensive from a police perspective. But I think we've got our response got it right. I think what we've seen since, I think, sort of the middle of July is lots of protest activity outside the hotel. And there's been protest activity pretty much every week since the middle of July. That has resulted in 23 people being arrested for a variety of offences, criminal damage, public order offences, some of those being hate crime offences. But 10 of those investigations have had positive outcomes where people have either been charged or cautioned for offences, and 6 people remain on bail for that. I think there's been lots of narrative sort of covered in social media in particular about the number of people who've been adversely affected by hate crimes, community tensions linked to things like the raising of the flags. What I would say is that from a statistical perspective, we haven't seen a significant number of reports around that. So it tends to be people talking in their own communities about things that have or haven't happened. And this typically manifests itself with hate crime and hate incidents that they are underreported. So we don't know the true extent of how people are feeling or how people have been adversely affected, which is why I think the conversation piece that Karen has talked about in terms of, you know, Norwich as a community actually coming together and really seeking to get everyone's views about what has been going on is really important, so that we can understand what needs to be done or doesn't need to be done moving forward. I think be fair to say that, you know, protest activity has diminished and it's quite light at the moment. That said, you know, we always sort of live in anticipation of sort of trigger events elsewhere in the country or the county that may cause people to come back out and start venting their feelings about this issue again. But yeah, it's certainly been a very, very challenging sort of 5 or 6 months period.
Thank you. Councillor Sands, then Councillor Stuteley, and then we'll move to recommendations unless we have any other points.
It's worth noting, in support of Ed's comments, local schools on the west of Norwich, in particular in Bothorpe and Cossey, have all been running programmes on sort of, you know, British values and anti-hate and all of this sort of stuff. So, which it seems to have been having a very positive effects.
Just to come in on that, the schools are very much an area that we're going to be working with the work that we're doing with Belong moving forward as well. Be one of the partners.
Thank you. Councillor Stuteley.
Thank you. There's reference in the in the report to retail crime, which is a major issue in the city centre at the moment. I represent Mancroft Ward, which covers most or much of the retail area, and I go to monthly meetings when I can to organised by BID and the retailers who are represented there, and the stories I hear about retail crime and the ASB that goes with it are really quite eye-opening. I just wondered whether there is I know that some of the work is actually ongoing, has been really good, and the officers that are involved are really keen and actually do some really good work. I just wondered if you can report to us whether you're on top of this situation now, whether things are improving, whether you've got any plans to improve that situation for our retailers and those that are affected by the antisocial behaviour that goes with it.
So what I would say is we have got some excellent officers, particularly in the city centre, who work tirelessly around retail crime. It probably is the tip of the iceberg in terms of what they get to deal with, what they get to know about, and what they get to deal with. They deal with very well, and we have one of the highest detection rates, you know, positive outcomes where we actually get hold of people and bring them to justice for offences. And indeed, I know that, you know, our chief constable gets approached, you know, regularly to talk about, you know, how Norfolk are able to have a really good positive outcome rate in relation to retail theft, despite the relatively small investment. There is more that we would like to do, of course, and, you know, those relationships with the business improvement district and retailers is really important. But and I suppose this is always the balance. It's about, you know, the finite resources that the constabulary has to be able to put into things where there are other crimes and investigations that have, you know, a much more significant threat, harm and risk. But look, we absolutely recognise that you can't have, you know, particularly a city centre where people feel as though they can go and shoplift with impunity. So it's really important that we talk about it, that we promote the successes that we have in terms of the successful prosecutions, but also that we take opportunities where we can to divert people away from the criminal justice system as well. You know, a lot of the the people that we come across are first-time offenders, and actually if we can put them on diversion programmes to prevent them entering the criminal justice system and prevent further offending is really important too. I suppose, you know, forward-facing is probably one more for sort of Craig to sort of talk about, but I think we are in a good position, but obviously, as with everything, we could do better.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Yeah, I know that Norfolk Constabulary are setting a standard with some of the work on this, and it is really impressive. But it is a major problem, isn't it? And I just wondered if there was anything that you think the council could do to help you in that work. So, for example, we have a limited amount of CCTV across the city, and whether that an addition to that network would be helpful to you. And that could form part of a recommendation.
So, yeah, yes, I think is the short answer. You know, I think at the moment, in terms of the sort of monitor provision, it is limited to sort of, you know, weekend evenings, which is obviously very useful for our management of the nighttime economy areas. We have put CCTV operators in place at other times through additional funding, through our hotspot funding initiative, and I think that will definitely continue. But yes, the more virtual eyes that you can have in the city, the better. I suppose the other thing is about increasing capable guardianship. It's not just about policing presence, but about security presence in shops. You know, it's mentioned around you know, community wardens, and any uniform visible presence in an area is going to help to deter criminality. So anything that could be done around that, I would welcome and support.
Thank you. So, yes, go on.
Comment quickly. Just that the Home Office are calling on police and crime commissioners at the moment to support them with a campaign called Winter of Action. Locally, it will be branded up as the Safer Norfolk. It has within it a priority of retail crime. Obviously, as you'd imagine, Norwich City Centre falls very much within that as a priority area. The plan brings together a lot of the activity we've already been talking about. So, as in reporting on it, that will help us in terms of kind of monitoring as a community safety partnership, and provides kind of some hard data and information about what's been undertaken. As you already highlighted, that the local bids runs a really impressive partnership. Crime reduction partnership in the city centre, but I just wanted to flag that locally the Winter of Action will be taking place from the 1st of December all the way through until the 31st of January. So there will be kind of a heightened focus on retail crime, as well as the nighttime economy and violence against women and girls, and also social behaviour in the city centre.
Thank you for the update. And Beth.
Just wanted to come back on what you mentioned, CCTV, and it was something, just I suppose as chair of the Safer Norwich board, it's something we've discussed a number of times about what are the different models that could be used in terms of going forward, and obviously in the context of LGR, that sort of there's some thoughts around that, because you're looking at different authorities with different systems as well going forward. So these are all things that we're very conscious of, and there's been a number of suggestions, but we want to make sure it works and is effective and isn't going to cause challenges as well. So it needs to work, but it is something that's been on the agenda a number of times and something we've been looking at.
Council laws, and then we'll move to recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on a few of those points. Just really an open question. I've come across since I've taken on this role in papers, I think for planning and licensing, something called designing out crime in buildings and areas. I was wondering if any comments on that. I mean, it could include obviously CCTV and some of the dealing with some of the issues that Councillor Stookley has raised, and ASB in places like Hay Hill and so on.
Absolutely. As part of our Safer Streets funding that we had last year, one of the things that we did provide was some environmental visual audit training. So the members of the ASB team, Safer Neighbourhood Initiative, have all undertaken that, and it was the Designing Out Crime officers who provided that training for us. So it is something that is very much at the forefront of our minds when we're looking at developments, when we're looking at anything that we can potentially do to support our partners with on the Safer Norwich board. We can send our officers out to do an environmental visual audit. We have the Safer so the estate aesthetics budget as well, which we can look at making some sort of small contributions towards improvements as well. So it's very much something that's there within my team's capability to help with.
In terms of recommendations, I'm going to ask Alex to go through a few, but the generalised top line ones we haven't really discussed, like if there's anything else we'd want in this report next year, the format it's in, or other information or training on any issues we'd like here. And we've had a very kind offer from Karen to spend some time with the team. So I think if there's anyone with any ideas now, but otherwise we could perhaps commit to following that up. Orion, did you have any thoughts on any of those now? But then Alex will run through the recommendations we've got.
Yeah, I've got a couple of recommendations to add when we've gone through those, but just specifically on the report, I'd like to see, if possible, some detailed statistics and analysis on the types of crime at ASB that we're dealing with, and perhaps even mapped as well across the city. I know this data is available, so if it could be brought into this report, that would be really good.
Thank you. So what I propose to do is perhaps Alex read them out. I sense there's a lot of consensus in the room, so I'd propose to take them together as a set rather than vote individually on them, if that's okay with everyone. Matt.
Chair, apologies. I did have one quick recommendation, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank
so we'll
you.
come
So,
to you. And then,
I don't know if it's something that you were just planning to do, Karen, but you mentioned there was going to be a report compiled by the person who's holding the name of the role that escapes me, which is very similar to a community warden. I was just going to ask if we could put a recommendation for Cabinet to explore as fully as possible funding options for community wardens, just because I think it's important that we are looking into that. And it would be good for that to be led politically rather than just through officers. No offence to officers, but obviously believe in political leadership.
just as that didn't really come out of our discussion so far, I'm just looking to see if everyone supports that, if we take that on block with our... Okay, and Ian, what do you want to put forward yours as well?
Thank you. And if it's not noted, I'd like to suggest some kind of a promotion by this committee of further CCTV where possible, and also, I mean, this is something that I could bring up as an item in this. I was going to ask a question about it, but perhaps just go straight to a recommendation. We have, I understand we have tenancy engagement panels. I wondered whether they could be, whether we could have a look at restructuring those so that there's more feedback from residents themselves, because they are the ones that are actually experiencing the ASB.
So some of the work that's going on around tenant engagement at the moment is looking at introducing some new, more specialist groups that will look at particular areas. So one is, I think the first one is going to be repairs. So it's looking at, because we've got the broader sort of tenant engagement panel, but we want to engage more people, and often that's on more individual topics. So that we're going to look at a range of things, but we're sort of starting with the things that the current TIP panel have suggested and then recruit more residents into. So we'll look at a range of things that we get asked about, and some of that is around community safety, ASB, things like that, that relate to our tenants. So we'll look at different topics as we go forward for different panels, but they're more specialist in a sense than the current group that meets.
Thank you. In that case, can we endorse proposals to create new groups to target the antisocial behaviour, community safety? Thank you.
Thank you. So we will sort of just refresh our minds on what those were. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. So the first one is, I feel, is slightly more of an action, which is, or it might be a recommendation. This was when Councillor Hookner said it would be helpful to know more about community speedwatch and how the council can promote this more. And Karen said that we could promote this through the housing hub and can take that forward. So is that an agreed sort of recommendation or an action to do that? Sorry.
Can I just ask, maybe the housing hub is one great avenue to promote it, but there might be others, so maybe to explore all avenues. Yeah.
Explore more avenues, yeah. Perfect, thank you. Then the second one was asking for a recommendation to ask for more information on what could be enforced around 20 mile per hour areas. I might need some support with the wording on that one. But does that jog everyone's memory? Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds good.
Then the next one was from the chair, a recommendation on commending the work in reducing youth violence, but recognising the need for greater youth provision. Then I think this one was an action actually, which was that Karen will circulate the report that came out of the hate crime conference.
That one may just be a little bit delayed because we actually haven't got the report at the moment, but as soon as we have it, we will circulate it.
Mm-hmm. And then a recommendation about the report that we'll receive next year as part of next year's cycle was to request to include detailed statistics and analysis on the types of crime and antisocial behaviour we're dealing with, and potentially include maps to show that across the city. A recommendation to ask for Cabinet to explore funding options for community wardens, and a recommendation to endorse proposals to create new tenant engagement groups to target community safety.
I think we had one at the beginning to thank the community policing team for work over a difficult time this year. Ian, did you have something to add?
Yes, I can't hear very well. I just wondered if we'd included the proposal for additional CCTV where possible in those. And also on the on one of the earlier items, the community speedwatch. I know that have to that is it's quite involving. It's quite an important job, isn't it? And also the people who undertake that work sometimes have some antisocial behaviour aimed at them while they're in operation. So I think maybe we should think carefully about how that's promoted and to ensure that people are fully informed about what's involved. But it certainly should be promoted across the city, and I certainly would like to see some in my ward. If anyone is listening to this on the YouTube and want to get in touch with me, I'll try and help them set it up.
Perhaps to add to that as well, the speed indicators that you can have on roads that communities can put in, and perhaps how we work with the police on maintaining those, changing the batteries, etc., would be a good thing for us to just pick up. Perhaps not getting the detail of that now, but I think they are quite good deterrents, and they also record information, and some wards have done them as part of there, but we do need to sort of sort out how they're maintained. So if we can put the safety monitors, whatever they're called, indicators maintenance. Yeah, thank you. A very useful, interesting item. I'm glad we've had it as part of our scrutiny. So there was a very kind offer to have some time with the team, with Karen, going forward. So perhaps if you'd like to circulate that as an action, that will be really useful for councillors. Thank you very much for your time coming today, and for all the questions. Really good. We'll move on to the next item now. Do we have to pass those recommendations? Do we have to vote on them? Yeah. Yeah. Are we all agreed? Votes for? Yeah. Votes against? Any abstentions? No, unanimous. Thank you. So item 5, yeah, I'll just give a moment for people to withdraw. Thanks for all your work. So item 5 is a draft good neighbourhood management policy. It's really good to have these two items together, really. They inform each other. And again, I'd like to welcome Beth a second time and ask her to introduce the report.
Thank you. I'm really glad we've had the opportunity to bring this, because we spend a lot of time talking about ASB, but I think there's a lot of other challenges people experience, and anything we can do to help people have quiet enjoyment of their homes and help them live together in a more harmonious way and deal with some of the confusions and complications that can arise for people, misunderstandings. We don't want it to be all or nothing, that either it's ASB or there's nothing at all to support. This helps give some sort of middle ground, and it's part of our responsibility as a responsible landlord to help people have those. It's working as a landlord to help support them live together and deal with things like ASB. But I think all of councillors have had that casework where it's around sort of day-to-day noise that actually it's people's interpretation of it, and that can be really distressing for one person, but actually it is day-to-day noise for another. And it helps us then be realistic in the resources we're using as well, in terms of what is actually classed as antisocial behaviour. So it's all about having happier communities, and the more we can do to support those. So yeah, I'm really glad we've now got this coming forward, and it's part of our wider sort of approach that we're now covering a sort of broader base of areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. It's my understanding this isn't going to Cabinet and will be updated regularly as a policy. So, and it links to a lot of other items. But yeah, any questions? Councillor Sands and Councillor Herkner.
The statement, if I may. Looking at the survey and the way the results have been presented, I found them very, really good. It was easy to read, easy to follow, so should be commended.
Councillor Herkner and then Councillor Laws.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions again. Maybe the first one is that I think how I read the document is that it's very much about how not to be a bad neighbor rather than formulating necessarily a positive vision of how to be a good neighbor. So I was wondering whether that's maybe an aspect that could be added or developed, and ideally obviously informed by tenants' views, what makes for a good neighbor, to not just start with a bad and not only focus on the bad. One consideration, but then relatedly, I was just surprised that there was quite a low number of respondents to the survey, really, yeah, whether there's obviously, I think this only works if people buy into it and feel represented by it. And so just wondering what your view was on why respondent rates were so low, or whether there's more that could be done to reach out to more tenants, given how many there are. And if I can just add on to that, was a survey, obviously the youngest age category that participated was 18 to 24 years. And I was wondering whether there has been, or whether there's any possibility to also include children and youth, because I guess they're often perceived as a problem. It'd be interesting also to understand how they perceive their neighborhoods and what they think would make for a good neighborhood. There's this nice example of the ball, that if a ball is kicked in the wrong garden, it should be given back, which I thought, well, it's interesting. I'm sure children have more concerns that would make them happier about their neighborhoods.
I think in terms of, you said about bad neighbours, there is stuff in there as well about what good neighbours are, but also I think it's going to be really helpful having this published, because often people look to go, where does what I'm concerned about fit in? What route should I be going down? So having that clear, this is examples of things, that's a thing, helps people relate a bit more rather than leaving things too abstract in some senses. I think, and we want people to have easy access to information, so having that out there. In terms of who we're engaging with, I suppose there is an element of who has a tenancy with us. This is about us as a landlord, so the tenant and the person who signs that tenancy is going to be over 18, so there is that element. Yes, we want their families to be considerate neighbours as well, but the responsibility for that tenancy does sit with the person who has signed that. So I suppose that would be part of it. And there is a limit to, we've got an awful lot of engagement with an awful lot of policies going on at the moment. So this is just one of a number that we're engaging with people on.
Did you want to follow up on that?
Yes, could there maybe be a recommendation to explore possibilities for seeking more children and young people's views in the formulation of this policy?
We'll note that and come back to it. I just wanted to ask something myself there around the audience for the document, because it is a policy, but it also speaks directly to tenants. So we've got that dual audience, if you like, which never makes for a very easy read, because on one level you're trying to cover off all the things you want to sort out, and another level you want to talk directly to tenants. So I wondered if there's a possibility of having a separate document for tenants, which perhaps has slightly more positive spin in it, so that you're evidencing good behaviour as well as describing what difficulties are.
Yeah, that's something that we've actually recommended as part of the equality impact assessment that we've done for the policy. So that will be coming probably after Christmas now, once the policy is approved.
I wonder, thanks, that's great. If we could perhaps see that through scrutiny as well. I don't know, it'll be interesting to just, I don't know quite how we do that, but it'd be quite nice to have it picked up in some way that we can have a look at it, because it does seem very linked to the efficacy of this.
Chair, we can bring that back as an information bulletin. That would be agreeable to the committee.
Would people be happy with that?
Bring it. Gone off. We can bring it back as a information bulletin, so it's just an update really. For it's on the end of the meeting, but you can have a look at it, and if there's any questions, we can take them away at that point. But it's a way of keeping committee informed, if that's acceptable to you.
How do people feel about that? That sound good? Yeah, that would be helpful, I think. Thank you. Councillor Laws and Councillor Stoopley. Yes, go ahead.
It's just a comment really, just to throw out for any discussion. Looking at the survey, and I totally agree with Councillor Sand's comments that it's very clearly well presented. On pages 54 and 55 in the agenda pack, it just struck me that although I appreciate it's a relatively small and obviously self-selecting sample, that the answer to the question 10 about having a long-term conditional disability attracted nearly half of the respondents to say yeah, so attracted was answered yes by nearly half respondents, and then of those on page 55, the largest single category was mental health condition, and certainly any comments on that must, in itself present some challenges, I guess.
I think from my understanding is that's fairly reflective of the demographics of our tenants, and the challenges people have, but also people's more openness to declare things like mental health conditions. So I suppose from that perspective, it's positive. And when we look even population wise, we're talking potentially 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 is the stats that mine generally go with. So when we then look at in terms of those who are our tenants, we're going to generally have a part of our tenant group who has more complex needs as well. She'll have a slightly higher proportion there as well. So I think that is quite reflective, but it does highlight the need, and it's why we're so keen on partnership working in everything we do. Like when we talk about the Safer Norwich Board and been pressing to try and get organisations like NSFT involved, because actually there are a lot of complex needs that come with the people that live, who are our tenants, and we want them to be well supported. But it's also why we've got things like Interact, specialist support team, and looking at what are our tenants' needs when we're in terms of having a safe and sustained tenancy. That sometimes there is that need for additional support, and we try and help them access that in the most appropriate way, be it from ourselves or partners.
Councillor Stuteley and then Fulton McAllister.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I'll just go back to what we were talking about, sort of the report and the creating a more positive approach. I just wondered, your answer to me in council the other day about when I asked about the possibility of a PSPO in the Brook Hotel area, you said that to support communities, we're embarking on a programme of community cohesion work, which will seek to address tensions and promote healthy conversations moving forward. I wondered if this is an opportunity to incorporate that work into this programme, and in order to create that sort of more positive approach, rather than, as one of my colleagues said, a sort of instead of having the what not to do, have a more positive approach of how it would be better to behave.
As Karen said, we're looking at different versions, but I think it is important as well to have some stuff that is clear. I would say that as often when you work with people, they want to know both what's good and what that shouldn't happen. So also when you're looking as someone who's needing to raise a concern, of saying, is this something that is a problem or not? And if they've got both sides of it, it can be helpful. So I think there is more to look at, and that's what Karen's already mentioned, and something we're keen to continue doing.
Okay, thank you. I've got another question, but do you want to come back to me?
Let's have Councillor Fulton McAllister, then we'll come back to you. Perhaps if we could incorporate that in the recommendation for that one, to check that we've incorporated any learnings from the community cohesion work into that, whether that takes its next iteration or whatever, but we want to make sure we're getting those new insights in, don't we? So Councillor Fulton McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. So for what it's worth, I agree with Beth that it's important to have both the positive and the negative clearly outlined, because especially when people are wondering whether something is allowed or not. A lot of our residents are wanting to know they are making a legitimate complaint, and having that guidance from us is incredibly helpful. So thank you. On that basis, I think actually this is overall an incredibly good policy. I think it would be helpful as a bit of work in the medium term, specifically around the ball game and children playing section. We've got a lot of areas where there are signs up about no ball games where it just doesn't make sense, and it feels incredibly unwelcoming to children and young people. And I wanted to ask that we review all of the areas where those signs are, and that we look at where it's appropriate for those signs to be. There may be areas where it's more appropriate to have no ball game areas, but I like that the policy is clearly shifting, and that's really positive. We as a society are becoming much more inclusive of children in public spaces, which is good. We are going down a more European attitude to that, but if we could incorporate that as a wider review, that would be great.
And thank you, Beth.
I'm more than happy to look at that, and I suppose as you was talking, I was thinking about it in a more broader sense. There are actually some things that can be more disruptive than ball games, but actually it's about maybe having a positive, what are the positive places to play, rather than saying what are the negative places in that sense. I think there's some wider work we're doing around our estates, and I think that
Thanks. Just to clarify that for Alex, so that's sort of as part of the wider work on estates to review all the no ball games signs and areas, and perhaps link that with the play strategy as well. Yeah. Thank you. So we'll come to, I think it's Councillor Herkler next, and then yeah, we'll come to.
Thanks. I was quite struck by the statistics on page 48. How confident do you feel about knowing where to go for help with neighbourhood issues? And only a fifth of respondents felt confident about knowing that. And so I was wondering whether that could be flagged a lot more in the tenant-facing version of this policy. Where do you go for help? I think that the mediation scheme needs to be clear. I was also wondering, because the policy mentions the caretaker's responsibilities and the council's responsibilities about grounds maintenance, and I hear from tenants just as much complaints about the caretakers not doing their work properly and NCSL, leaving part of the grass uncut, as I hear about neighbours. I wonder whether it'd also be helpful to have clear pathways for raising these concerns to the council in that final document.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we're looking at after Christmas is some real engagement work with our tenants in terms of promoting the ways of reporting different ASB, the non-ASB nuisance, the issues with grounds maintenance. We're really looking at what we can do in terms of sort of making that easily accessible for people, signposting them to the relevant resources in terms of our Catch-22 mediation contract, how they can get in touch with our ASB team, the right routes for routing through fly tipping or garden concerns, all of those different parts. And that is very much on the plan for January, February.
So I think we had Councillor Oliver. Oh, did you want to come back on that? Go ahead.
No, it's a different, but it's a tiny point. So maybe you can just make it in.
Okay.
No longer speak here. It's about the bonfires. On page, where's it gone? 30. Instead of having a bonfire, you could consider other methods of disposing of rubbish. And so I was just worried that in a way suggests that it's okay to burn rubbish, and there's obviously concerns around air pollution and toxic fumes. So I just wondered whether this could be reworded a little bit and make it clear what can be permissible to burn and what is a health and safety hazard.
I think perhaps what we could look to do is put a link towards our environmental health policy there. That might be a really easy way of sort of referencing everything that you're saying in a policy that we've already got as in line with what we're doing with the other links that are in that policy.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. Yes, I think my questions were mainly answered actually from the response you gave just a minute ago, Karen. Just how we address emerging problems that might die down or might turn into something else, and just kind of capturing them before it gets to crisis level, and that signposting. I was wondering, I suppose, it might be a question for a different forum, how much that's dependent on our IT interface, because sometimes, you know, as you recognise, say if it's fly tipping, it's noise disturbance, various things like that. Quite often I find them sort of going back to residents saying, like, report this under this, report this under that, and hopefully we can kind of funnel that into.
We are actually working on the new website, so all of these updated links and a clearer pathway is what the whole new website is actually being designed with, to make it much more easy for our residents to navigate. And there is always the option for, if people are unsure or they're not digitally able, they can still contact our contact centre to make those reports, and they will get funneled through the right pathway in that as well. So that's something that we will definitely be referencing in the work that we're doing after Christmas, how to report correctly, signposting people to the right directions for the right issues.
Lovely, thank you.
I think, yeah, did we coming in on this particularly, or yeah, that's okay.
I'm very interested in the website redesign.
I will come to Oliver on this point, but yeah, it's my understanding that the whole website is being redeveloped. So different areas are being done in a different phased approach. So environmental aspects are being done at a different time than what perhaps sort of housing related ASB is being done. But I don't know, Oliver, if you've got any more details on what's happening in your area of the website.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the waste pages, the environment page is one of the first pages that went through to the new Drupal sort of look and feel of the council. So we have reviewed all those pages to try and make them more simple and clear to follow. So as the issue the council you're raising is about the online reporting process, I think we'll have to do some further investigation there, because if you're facing issues already timing out and it not being user friendly, that's something we need to sort of review and ensure that doesn't happen, because we want to encourage residents to report stuff so that we can action it quickly. If they're failing to do it, they won't do it again if they encounter difficulties with it. So I think that's something I can take away and just check that, you know.
I think it's my understanding that they are looking at the forms that are there at the moment are called Jadu forms, and it's my understanding that they will be replaced at some point as well. That's part of the website work, but we can definitely clarify that for you.
So we have transitions in August, September time to the new, it's called Open Task. So it's a new reporting system. So we've removed the Jadu forms. If you're going onto the website, you wouldn't really see any difference because it looks very similar to as it was before. There have been one or two issues around the operational difficulties, I guess, about the reporting online for that information being pushed through to NTSL. And so we've got sort of looking at the back end data about fly tipping data and how we can report it, and using that for hotspot mapping and all the other stuff that we need to get to. Transferring from the Jadu forms to the Open Task system has caused some challenges that are just coming to light now. So we are actively working on that at the moment, but I still think I'll take away the fact that you reported that there's online difficulties for you to report or timing out issues or something like that, because we need to overcome that if we're asking more residents to use a digital self-serve solution.
Thank you. Just on that, before I come to other questions, do you think we could perhaps look at this at Scrutiny at some point, and we can perhaps put it on the work programme? I do get quite a lot of feedback from residents about the website. I know it's changing. I'd like personally to propose that Scrutiny looks at the new website and looks at customer journeys on it specifically, and that we have some work done on customer journeys, just because I want to be able to be confident in saying to residents that we've done this look at how, because I do get people getting very frustrated with me, and I want to be able to go back to them and say, you know, we've looked at the customer journey. So just that we have a bit of a road test of the new site to make sure we iron out these kind of things if we can have that as a, if people are in agreement. I've got Councillor Stootley, then Oliver, then okay, then everyone basically, but yeah, we'll come. Oh, were you saying yes to that? Yeah, okay, that's good, but so Councillor Stootley.
Thank you. Yeah, before I come to my question, we had a task and finish group on fly tipping a few years ago, and in that group, one of the recommendations that came forward was to consider an app for the purposes of reporting. And it would be a very simple thing to produce, and I think time's moved on. It would be even easier now than it was at the time. And I don't think we were ever suggesting that every member of the or every resident in the city should download an app and use it. But it is usually the same people that report fly tipping and other issues in community. So an app that could be used by officers and councillors and those community leaders, I think would be really good, and also very simple to put together. So that would be a recommendation to go along with the one that you've suggested. And my question is about the data. The report itself is, as been said before, is very well put together and really easy to follow. But unfortunately for me, the sample was just really low. I wondered just sort of whether we've learned any lessons from this, or first of all, whether you're disappointed with the level of responses, just 70 from an entire city. That doesn't seem very good, and it doesn't really inform it doesn't really inform us very well if it's with such a low sample, 14,500 properties on our list, and also lots of other people who will be affected by the properties that are near them. So I just wondered what you've learned from this, whether we could engage more, whether there was a text sent out to people, as well as what was listed here. If not, why not? And what other means of communication we could use?
So the survey responses, whilst it was disappointing that it was low, we were just disappointed as well. It is pretty much in line with other survey responses that we've had on sort of what's a sort of not hugely emotive context. So the other engagement that we did do is that we were promoting when we were talking to our residents that we're working with. So both ourselves and the tenancy teams were promoting the fact that we have got engagement ongoing on this. So it wasn't all through digital channels that it was promoted. There were messages that went out on social media, but we were actively promoting it when we were out and about throughout the city talking to people. So yeah, we like I said, we were a little bit disappointed with the numbers, but it's not out of line with previous surveys that we have conducted.
Okay, sorry, do you want to go first, Lena?
Thank you. I think it's also about, this isn't the kind of one and done type issue. You know, this is feedback we're getting daily in our inboxes, and you will get daily in your inboxes of ward councillors. So it is that constant understanding what's coming through our inboxes, what's coming through when housing and other officers are talking to residents. So it isn't just that one-off survey, it's that constant communication and conversation. We have got the housing hub, which we've launched, which gives people other opportunities to engage. We've had that running a couple of months now, so we're looking at how that's working, how people engaging, how they're not, all those sorts of things, and getting some learning from that. As Councillor Jones said, we're looking at more formal tenant engagement through different types of panels. This went through the tip panel as well. So we're looking at constantly doing it. I think most people want to kind of get on with their daily lives and don't always want to be feeding comments back on surveys. We have satisfaction surveys after repairs, after voids, after letting, after ASB. So it's all of that sort of involvement and engagement we're doing all the way along the line. This was another route, and I've been doing consultation many years, and actually I don't think it's actually too bad a comment, a response, in terms of and the quality of the comments that we got back as well. But it is something we would want to look at. It's a document we'll continue to update and evolve, and we'll get more feedback and find better and more lots of different options for people to contact us and comment and on this issue and other issues. Thanks, Ian. Do you want to
Appreciate that. Thank you for explaining. I think actually 70 responses from 219 visits to the web page is actually pretty good. So that I can see why you're quite pleased with that. It's about getting people to the web page in the first place, and I wondered if we can learn some lessons from that. We have people's numbers on text, and we can contact them in various different ways that are much cheaper than post. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. So I take your point that was one consultation. It was part of what we listened to on that. But so then how does the wider level of communication around it impact the policy going forward? What's the process by which, we can be sure that any other ongoing communications we have about that are going to be fed in to the policy, just for councillors to know that?
Yeah, I mean, we always have review dates for policies. We keep a tracker of that, of when there's formal review date. But we tend to find that, society changes, life changes, and things crop up that weren't an issue previously. I mean, we didn't think we'd be dealing with things like e-scooters, did we? And they are now an issue. So they're the sorts of things. If you feel there's things that are becoming issues in your wards that either we haven't picked up or you feel we need to, just get in touch with us, have a conversation with us. It might be things we pick up as well on this. If we start doing the annual cycle of community safety back in here as well, it's another opportunity for us to pick up things. But if you think there's something missing or something that's cropping up in your areas that either we've not picked up or we feel we haven't addressed it, we can adapt and amend. This policy is one that is something that we can adapt and amend quite quickly. It doesn't need to necessarily go through that formal cabinet route, which takes a bit longer. And also there's best practice, because the regulator, the housing ombudsman, and other housing, particularly housing groups, produce best practice all the time. So there'll be things as well we look at and go, have we covered that off? Again, things like ring doorbells and the use of your own private CCTV. Again, issues that we never dealt with a few years ago are now issues, and we'll have to keep adapting as we go.
Thank you. That's useful, and so that's to let all councillors know that as a recommendation, and then perhaps also to incorporate that into the text somewhere that it may be. I haven't read it closely enough, so but to make it clear that it's a living document that people can add to, and indeed residents can add to. I find it a bit strange calling them customers, I have to say, but maybe that's just a decision. Customers to me buy something, and this isn't necessarily a bought service, it's citizens really, but that's perhaps splitting hairs. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me. If you look at your free truck, you always guarantee them all things car. First, in of decision in a care page, encouraging people to prepare this out, which is handling let's report, because a lot of companies they don't think of going online themselves. If they have something on their page which is very recognized, so to speak, and not just with things that are numbers, shelter, and even on the front cover, see page 5, tear this page out and put it on your fridge to give people distraction. And that might be useful. I don't know.
I think we have to look at all avenues as well, because I'm the sort of person who puts the bin collection thing on my fridge, still have that. But I'm very aware that people a lot younger than me just wouldn't even think about doing that sort of thing. So I think we have to look at all different avenues to get the communication out, and people will prefer different ways of doing it, but that's something, you know, we can certainly look at. We've got our own tenancy magazine as well, so we do lots of updates on those sorts of things. We've got screens and tower blocks that we can do messaging on, so there's lots of different avenues we can use.
Yeah, and we actually have a planned communication strategy with our Alison, who is our comms lady. So we're looking at internal and external communication of this policy once it's adopted in its final form. So that will be very much something that we'll be looking at. We're looking at TLC. There's a number of different things that we're thinking about, things along the lines of a day in the life of an ASB officer, to prompt things in people's minds in terms of what's ASB, what's fly tipping, what different areas of different policies and different reporting routes might be. So we're certainly looking at all avenues for communication.
Laura Ackwood.
I was just going to say that Councillor Sands, I was going to say something similar, and I think it applies maybe particularly to people who do not use the website and who sometimes flounder. And I want to see a sort of postcard size thing that you put on your fridge, torn out from anywhere, but somehow councillors distribute. Because the people who speak to me are often people who are 89, 90, and actually who sometimes flounder in typing in an accurate email address, and that's no disrespect, but as your site goes, these become things that you can't manage. So I was really pleased to hear you say that it's not just the website, you know, you can still phone in, you can get that contact, because it's so important for people. So you know, it's the going forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we also think about the social isolation element as well, in terms of contact with residents. And when they talk to our contact centre, it might be the only person that they speak to that day. So we don't want to completely drive away from digital. Whilst digital is very helpful and very useful, there will always be the need for being able to serve those people who choose not to use digital.
Thank you. So a recommendation around that could really be to put some resource behind the comms plan, I think, and have something really creative as well, and make sure it's in different media and beyond digital, although digital is obviously really important. Thank you for that. Councillor Oliver, and then I think we'll move to recommendations on this, if that's all right with everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to lose an opportunity. I was just reminded when Councillor Fulton McAllister mentioned the signs about ball games. There's still quite a lot of signage around on the estates with a graphic of a mattress, and it's a don't fly tip sign, but it really looks like it's inviting people to fly tip. And I think, you know, it's a small detail, but it is emblematic for a lot of people of the service and the confidence that they have in it. And it's just such a shame that sometimes at the first hurdle people are going, you know, and you know, we want to promote ourselves better and be clearer, I think. I mean, there's one where I live that we've been trying to remove for ages, another one at Cranworth Gardens. Yeah, anyway, I'm sure ward councillors will be well aware. So if maybe we can report those in with a photo and get them quickly removed, that would be really helpful as a start.
Councillor Sands, then Councillor Stootley, and then we'll definitely move to recommendations.
Just in support of what Councillor Oliver said, I've had one or two requests from residents over the years. Can their street be designated a safe play area with signs saying, you know, warning anyone entering the street, you know, there may be children playing, particularly in respect of cul-de-sacs and things. So I don't know whether that is something that can be looked in, rather than having, you know, don't play ball games here, you know, something, this is a safe play area or something, you know, that might be useful. I don't know.
Thank you. That would come in.
No idea who that would actually be, but I think
yeah,
we can certainly find out.
That would be useful to explore, because it comes under the bracket of it does come under the bracket of estate management though, and having positive messages as well as negative ones. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Julie.
Yes, just following up from Councillor Oliver's note on the signage. Again, it was something that was brought up in the Task and Finish group a few years ago, and that signage does really for many people it indicates dump your stuff here, and especially if English isn't their first language.
Thank you.
I would welcome any councillor to inform us of the location of where they are, and then we can get a programme of removal and replacement, because we have got new images with colour photographs and quite clear, sort of, you know, with the red crosses, that sort of approach, so that if English isn't your first language, it discourages that action. And also QR codes on there or telephone numbers of how to find more information. So yeah, I would welcome any councillor or any of the residents highlighting those locations to us.
West Pottergate as well. Can we note that then, councillors, to get in touch with Oliver and let them know? I think they're just ones that have got historically left behind on things, you know, they're around the back of things. And okay, so let's run through the recommendations. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. The first recommendation is to explore the possibility of seeking more children and young people's views in the formulation of this policy. The second one is a recommendation to have a more audience-facing document specifically for tenants and to incorporate learning from the community cohesion work into that policy. Another point is to bring back the tenant-facing policy as an information bulletin to the Scrutiny Committee.
Alex, on those, I think one of them was to have some positive examples within that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Another recommendation was to review all of the areas with no ball game signs and where appropriate to remove those signs. And linking that in with the council's play strategy. Another point is if the tenant-facing policy could include clearer pathways for reporting concerns about caretaker responsibilities. Does that make, yeah. Go ahead.
As well as council responsibilities.
As well as council responsibilities.
Reporting mechanisms or mediation scheme, etc. So relevant pathways for action.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Another recommendation is to review the wording, which is on page 30 in the agenda pack, but maybe a different page within the actual policy, regarding the bonfires, and consider the wording, which is consider other methods of disposing rubbish. So I think the action was to put in a link to the environmental health policy. Lastly, oh no, not lastly, but we're nearing the end. To propose that Scrutiny looks at the new website and road tests customer journeys, so adding that onto the Scrutiny work programme.
I would like added to that the idea of putting a page in the Citizen magazine that can be torn out, because
that might be covered under another recommendation too, but yeah, happy to
okay.
have that in.
If it's not covered in one, I'll read out in a moment. I'll add that one to that one. Another recommendation is to consider an app for the purposes of reporting fly tipping in particular, or other issues. An app that could be used by officers, councillors, community leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I think this should probably be extended to all street issues. So sharps and dog fouling, etc.
Was the app just for, I thought the app was for everyone, not just officers and councillors.
I think it should be publicly available. I mean, it depends on how it's set up, and ideally it would be run as part of a website. But I think actually a dedicated app might be more suitable. But that depends on the technology.
I wasn't here at the time of the scrutiny meeting when that was discussed. I mean, normally we try and avoid things like apps because people have got a lot of apps on their phone anyway. This is yet another one for them to load. You know, I think there needs to be efficiency of the route via the website rather than an app. But, you know, I think if we could maybe pick that up as part of that wider discussion of the website, well, does that customer journey work? And is there something missing? Because you get the other frustration is they go on the app and we're not the highways authority. They're expecting to use the app for that sort of thing as well. We can't get it all on. But whether or not we look at how is the website functioning, is that the right route and is there anything missing? And maybe pick it up as part of that discussion.
Yeah, if we can just check it has been looked at as part of the website redesign and how it's been looked at, and if we're definitely sure it you know, if it's possible or not, I think that would be.
Chair, can I just I agree with that as a process going forward. Essentially, the reporting needs to be as quickly as possible for people, and if you can get a successful and quick report through a web page, then that's better than an app. But it's just an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. And then another recommendation is just to add clarity into the policy and the tenant-facing version to let people know that it is a living document that people can add to, and to get wording out to councillors that they also can make suggestions and the document can evolve. Again, the wording may amend slightly on that. Then we have another recommendation, which is to put some resource behind the comms plan, be creative and look at different media beyond just digital. I think that's in sharing the policy.
And something that can be torn out and put on fridges.
Yeah,
with like
fridge example.
As an example.
Right. And then just an action for all councillors that if councillors are aware of old signage, if they could inform officers of the location, they can get those removed and put in a new sign.
Excellent, thank you for those. So votes for those as a set of recommendations. Lovely. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, that's passed. Excellent. So we'll thank you very much for all your input on that. It's really helpful. So we're now on to the verbal update from HOSC. I'll try and make this as brief as I can. There is a bit to tell you, but I'll also provide a written report to Alex, so that will be circulated. There are 5 areas to update on from the last COSC. It was a really busy and interesting one. The vulnerable adults specification service specification changes, histopathology delays, speech and language therapy, the wellness on wheels bus, and finally the potential for Anglia Square health provision, which we might want to look at under the forward work programme, but it is also a HOSC item. So the first one is vulnerable adult service spec changes, which we talked about last time. We wrote as a committee to HOSC, and they've come back to us with some information, which I think Alex has circulated or has got. And I've also had a response to a question to the board. I'd just like to update you on that and the implications, and I have got a recommendation I'd like to propose. So I thanked Ed Garrett at the ICB for responding to my email, and I've asked for sight of the written evidence provided by the ICB to the legal advisors on which they based the decision that there was no material change to the service. You'll remember that what's at question here is whether there's a change to the vulnerable adult service or not. And I'm seeking that information as a member of HOSC and as an elected councillor for Norwich. So the service is relet in April, and there's going to be an opportunity to collect data to pick up if there are any changes with the issues with the changes after that from patients and staff involved. So at HOSC, I think we asked Healthwatch to come in and help with this after that, so that we have input into the scope and that work starts immediately, so that checks were ongoing, because health inclusion is a regional and national priority, because it's an area that is under listened to, health in people that aren't included in health provision, and because Healthwatch has done really good work in this area that we can build on. The audiences are not easy audiences to contact and listen to, and they are very vulnerable. And investment in this area will save needless spending in other areas. So that is what happened at HOSC. Since then, we've spoken. I've written to the board, and they've come back. So the notable changes that have happened, just to brief you on this, are that the duration of support for people suffering from not being included in health, and that's usually homeless people, people that have left prison, people that sex workers, and various other people that don't have access to care. The support duration was unspecified, and now it's been moved to 6 weeks or as appropriate. And the patient registration looks like it's changed. There's been the removal of mandatory transfer to Norwich Health Centre. So the concerns raised so far is that the continuity of care will be impacted, patient trust will be impacted, and compliance with national health inclusion standards will be impacted. There's also a lack of independent evaluation, and there's unclear evidence for improved outcomes and value for money, and limited transparency around that. So that's what I want to let you know. So the board has responded saying that the care will remain tailored to individual needs, and that the 6-week limit is flexible, and that there'll be a step up, step down access to other NHS services, that clinicians are experienced in shared care, and that clinical governance will be maintained. The shared care aspect is, the problem is, if you used to have people registered to the vulnerable adult service with a doctor there, and now they'll be registered to a couple of doctors, and you can see the problems that arise when someone who already struggles to access care has then got two different doctors, GP somewhere else, and straight away they start falling through the gaps. And that's why there was a vulnerable adult service to start with its own list. And that's what's at risk here, or seems to be at risk. They're saying that patients, that VAS don't actually register patients, but that's actually somewhat at being debated at the moment, shall we say. So what I'd like to, I'll send you all the points on that, but the key gaps and unanswered points are: there hasn't been any evidence for improved outcomes and value for money for the new spec. There's no data or measurable indicators provided. There hasn't been an independent evaluation of the current service. That hasn't been addressed. We haven't seen that this aligns with inclusion health standards, which are a specific, and, you know, it's like oncology. There's a set of standards for inclusion health, and we haven't had any reference to them, or long-term care requirements. We haven't had transparency on the specification, versions, or legal advice, or reasons for the limited disclosure around that. And we haven't had resource and implementation details. So there's been no specifics on funding, workforce capacity, or timelines beyond the contract award. In other words, they're saying, oh, all the doctors can help do this, but they haven't necessarily given us any evidence that all the doctors have agreed to do this. So the implications are that the assurance has been given that the changes are minimal, but in fact, introduction of time limits and registration flexibility do represent significant operational shifts. And there's a lack of evidence and clarity on implementation, which could affect the confidence and continuity of care and compliance with national standards. So I'd like to recommend that we write to HOSC, to the HOSC committee at county, with these points, which I can circulate, and ask particularly for the key gaps and unanswered points to be looked into by the ICB, who are the commissioner, and an answer provided to us. This is because the reason I'm still going on this one is it's a key service for Norwich. It's important it's provided, but very important to the users, obviously, and to all citizens of the city, because if the most vulnerable people aren't taken care of, it reflects on us all, first of all, and it will impact on all care. The service was specifically designed to make sure that vulnerable adults access tailored care, partly as if everyone ends up back in the mainstream, it often blocks access that could be more simply provided for other people, and the care is unsuccessful. So that's a proposal. I'm making a recommendation there. Can I ask if you're happy with that as a group? Yeah, anyone against that? So I think that's carried. The other points that were raised were histopathology delays, which I can share a report on, which is testing delays, basically. Skincare tests are really behind, but that is being addressed. Speech and language therapy, which is a huge issue at the moment in Norfolk, but again, there was quite a lot of information given on that. And the Wellness on Wheels bus, which is going to come to HOSC in the future, which I will again circulate the points on so that you can have more information on all of those. Any questions on HOSC? I'm really happy to take them away or out of the meeting as well at any time. No? Okay, thank you for listening on all of that. It's a really useful committee, I think, for us to be part of. Item 7 is deliberative democracy terms of reference, and then we're nearly done. I think, Councillor, we're bringing back this terms of reference to agree a change in the membership and perhaps to think about having a vice chair, but we'll hand over to Councillor Herkner to talk about that.
Thank you. So we asked for expressions of interest to join the task and finish group, and if I'm not mistaken, 5 councillors expressed an interest. Councillors Fox, Stutley, Oliver, Harper, and Sue Sands?
Mike Sands.
Oh,
Sue
Mike
Sands is already on.
Sue Sands is already on it. Apologies. Sue is already.
Sue's already on the group.
So
Yeah.
you'd be joining in addition. My perspective is that everybody who has an interest should be allowed to attend. The more the merrier, and I guess it's important to have input from as many people as possible, and as long as people are happy to put in the time, brilliant. So the terms of reference on the agenda suggest to increase to 7, because I think at the time the task and finish group thought that was the only realistic target, but now that we have 9 who are interested, I guess I don't know how it works formally, whether we can suggest and add it to these terms of reference to increase to 9 and then have that endorsed by the scrutiny committee.
Yeah, so the scrutiny committee are responsible for appointing members to the task and finish group. So if members here today could agree the increase of membership to 9 and that you're comfortable with those members who Councillor Herkner has just named to join the task and finish group, then that can be agreed here today and they can go forward and work together.
Votes for that, for 9? Happy with that?
Great, excellent. And then sorry, Alex, I didn't raise it with you before, but I was wondering whether it would be possible to appoint a vice chair, just because I'll be having a baby in March and might not be available at all times.
That can be done at the task and finish group.
Doesn't have to go through here.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go through here.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. And there's a meeting on Friday, the next meeting for that. Item 8, the work programme. This is Alex.
Just to say quickly that that is the work programme is tabled, apart from adding in the customer journey for the website. And also I've had a request today, if committee are minded to, we need to bring the business plan for Anglia Square, and we'd like to do that. It's currently being formulated. It's not formed yet, but we'd like to bring that on the 18th of December, if committee are minded to accept that onto the agenda for that evening.
You, Councillor Sands?
Not really to do with scrutiny, but just a comment on Anglia Square. Has anyone been going along to take regular photographs as the place comes down to provide a sort of record of things? Oh, good.
Councillor Herkner?
There's 2, well, maybe 3 other items that I'm wondering whether they could be added to the work programme. The first one is, we might remember that there was a scrutiny topic formed back in the day around the ethical and sustainable management of cash balances and investments, that then went to audit and from there to the Treasury Management Committee. And there that work seems to have been concluded. But I was wondering whether it'd be possible for the scrutiny committee to receive a report on the actions that have been taken in regard.
It's that's another information bulletin. If committee are minded, we can bring the information and then you can have a look at it. And if you want to have further information, then put it onto your work programme. That's the normal way we do it, is to give you the update on where we are with it. And then if you're not happy, you can ask for it to come back.
Yeah, that sounds great. I don't know if you need to vote on them at the end or something, but the other thing I wanted to raise is that the new financial strategy is coming to Cabinet next week, which suggests a change in how the budget is monitored, including quarterly reporting on any adjustments. And it mentioned the scrutiny committee as having some sort of oversight role, but it wasn't really specified in the financial strategy. So I'm wondering whether we can have clarity on how scrutiny would be involved and whether that would involve looking at these quarterly reports at scrutiny as well.
Can get that for you. Yeah.
And then the last question is just about Lion Homes. We were supposed to look into Lion Homes at scrutiny and whether there's a time frame for that already.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the report back. There's been some changes in audit personnel, but we are expecting a report back, and we're hopefully going to bring that. There'll be an update. There'll be updates coming anyway as we go through the MVL process, but we're hoping to bring that back early in the new year.
Thank you. So do we need to take a vote on any of those? Yeah, we've just got 1 point from Ian and then we'll vote on that.
We're having a few items added to the work programme and not really taking anything away, and we shouldn't. So I'm just slightly concerned about how we're going to squeeze an item in about Anglia Square, which could be quite a major item. Along with the housing development at Mile Cross Depot and equality information report at the same time. So there's three main items there. Wondered if there's a possibility or a likelihood now of actually looking at an additional scrutiny meeting to cover some of these items so that they get the time allocated that they need to.
Yes, of course, if that's
Yes, so December, as you say, has the Mile Cross Depot site equality information report, and we'll now have the Anglia Square business plan. But January actually only has the one item, which is social housing allocations, and then the work programme. So if members wanted to reallocate, there's room in January, essentially, is what I'm saying. If December's looking quite full, members could look at that.
Okay, so would it be reasonable to suggest that we move the equality information report into January?
I think that one may have to come in December because it goes on to Cabinet. Is that correct?
It goes on to Cabinet in January, and we have a statutory deadline to publish by the end of January. So if Scrutiny want to see it before it goes to Cabinet, we need to hit that deadline. Okay. If Scrutiny doesn't want to see it and it just goes straight to Cabinet, that's not a problem. But if you push it back, then it pushes me going to Cabinet and I miss my statutory deadline.
Okay. Well, my concern about that is pushing housing development at Mile Cross Depot down the agenda to another month. Again, it's something that we've been waiting for, and I think certainly the councillors in Mile Cross are keen to see this, and I think it's an important development site, so I think it should remain a priority. So I don't know whether
I'm happy to give an update note to Mile Cross councillors or an information bulletin via email, or whatever's easiest on Mile Cross. We're just about to go public with the main contractor that's just been awarded, so we've got a lot coming up in the next week or so on Mile Cross site. Yeah. So if it would help, I can do that, and then you have the update here in January if you want something as an interim. Entirely up to you.
So could that be an update briefing that's open to all councillors?
I was just going to send around an email to all councillors with where we are and everything, if that's helpful.
Okay.
So are you suggesting an email to councillors updating on the Mile Cross progress and then moving it to January for scrutiny?
If you find that would be helpful, I'm happy to move it to January. It's just if you wanted something more immediate, happy. And if there's any specific questions you want answering send an email and we can get those collated and sent round via email, and then have the second session in January.
Yeah, I think a session in January would be good. I just wondered, in the short term, because people have been waiting for this for a while, if you send an email round, it doesn't really give us an opportunity to ask questions and have a debate. So I just wondered if maybe a Teams briefing would be helpful.
Happy to do that. I'm not sure what the questions are, but you know, I can have.
There will always be questions,
of course, but happy to give a progress update on Mile Cross.
Would it be helpful if we collated if we gave councillors a chance to send you questions in advance of the briefing, so that you can cover them off? Or would that work, Ian? Or it's a bit chicken and egg.
We've got an update on Mile Cross coming out because we're about to award the main contract, so that'll be the next week or so. Obviously, we've got procurement rules, which is why I'm being a bit cloak and dagger at the moment. Happy to move the main item to January because that doesn't impact the statutory deadline I've got on the equality information. All I was saying, if there's anything between now and January you want answers to, happy to answer them. That's the offer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So just we need to vote for the programme. We've already done that. Yeah, as amended. Yeah, you're voting for. Yeah, good. Okay, everyone for that? Anyone against? No, I think we've got assent there. Thank you very much. That's closed, and thank you for all your hard work.